So, you know better. You know to not let your gas tank get this low. But it's been a crazy week at work, crazy week just with life. It got busy and your gas light comes on. So you pull over downtown at a small gas station you're not really familiar with. But you figure it's just gas, in and out. Once you pull over, you get up to the pump, you've already pulled up, you get out, and you see a little sticky note on all the gas pumps that says, go inside to pay. Apparently their card system outside is down. You say, okay, in your head, and you start walking towards the door. Closing that 50 yards or so between there and the store, when you're out in the open, exposed, no cover, you see two men step out from the shadows beside the building. One of them is holding a large wrench. You see him tapping that in his other hand in a rude, angry, and threatening manner. Then, you decide to reach for your gun. Your concealed carry handgun that you carry on you all the time, because you're a well-prepared, gun-fighting alpha male. You reach for that gun. As soon as you put your hand on it, you see the other man that's with him. He reaches, and on his waistband you see what appears to be a black silhouette of a semi-automatic handgun. He grabs it. Now you know what the situation calls for. You draw out, you get a good sight picture, and you make the decision to drop that hammer. Now once you drop that hammer, what does the work? What's going to do the damage on target is that bullet. That bullet that you selected. How are you selecting that bullet? Let's talk about that today. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and with real-world first-hand experience, which is, I hope, what a lot of you appreciate, those 2 points about this podcast. For there are many podcasts that talk about guns and gunfighting and all the cool new gear and kit, but I started this podcast in a jungle of those other podcasts because I didn't see a lot of them talking about it, number one, with God at the center, as everything should be, and number two, with real-world first-hand experience. It's fine to have opinions and go to forums and see all this stuff, and it's great to learn from what others have done and from what others say. But hopefully you guys see the value in somebody who's pretty much spent the majority of their adult life as a professional gunfighter, whether that is Marine Corps combat veteran, Army, LAPD, private contracting work, the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters, many competition wins in many different disciplines, and I hope you see the value of that, and I hope you appreciate that. I hope that you'll consider showing that value by going to goodshepherdtraining.com and becoming a patron. Patrons do get cool insider stuff that nobody else gets. Recently did a really fun episode on guns for the zombie apocalypse. That's only available to patrons. Also recently did another episode of specialty shotgun rounds. If you know, we've been doing a shotgun nerd out. And we did one just for patrons on specialty rounds, how to make your own slugs, breaching rounds, things like that. If you want those, become a patron for the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo. I think the value is there, and I hope that you see that. Also, things like my trapping kit is laid out for when I was a professional trapper. Anyway, enough about that. I'm going to plug in the bio before I get into today's topic. If you've heard the bio before, you don't want to listen to it, feel free to skip it. Skip around 3.5 minutes. I'm trying to trim it down a little bit. Skip around 3.5 minutes, and that should get you into the body of today's episode. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, He got me through some nasty places in this world of war zones and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news. Euangelion, as it were in Greek, the good news, the declaration of victory we have in Jesus Christ. That's mine, and if you're a Christian, I submit your Great Commission, as it's referred to share the good news. With that, let's get into today's topic. Now, I don't always talk about the other podcasts, but if you're not familiar with the Alpha Male podcast, we just did an episode on there. You can listen to either one of these episodes as standalone. They are not the same, but they do rhyme rather well. They would make fine poetry or music lyrics, as it were. They rhyme rather well. And the last one, if you want to listen to it on the Alpha Male podcast, it talks about looking at hunting a different way, as a God-given, beautiful resource to put meat on the table as a man, instead of the hunting culture that surrounds it and sometimes blinds us to what it really is. This episode is going to rhyme in that it's going to be looking at ammo a different way, thinking critically and looking at ammo maybe differently than you've been looking at it, perhaps a better way to look at it. And I'll use the same analogy. I am living off grid. If you don't know, if you don't keep up with the doings of the behind the scenes on the podcast. I stepped back from a full-time general manager position because I was working too much, I believe, to give these podcasts the attention to detail that they deserve. So I gave that up, and in an effort to cut living costs, I've been living off-grid in the national forests in the wilderness throughout the West. And I am camped above a river. And I went to cross said river to set up a shooting range. And at first I thought, oh, it's not that bad. I will roll up my pants and I will ford this river, take my shoes off, walk barefoot and ford this river. And just go pretty much straight across. And that did not work out too well. I mean, the goal got accomplished, perseverance. But I got super wet, my gun got wet, my EDC gear got wet, my flashlight got wet. All that stuff, I had to jettison quite a bit of duty ammo, which you'll probably know if you're listening to this episode, is not cheap because it got wet. The next time I had to go and repair said range, I stepped back, looked at the situation, and thought critically of a better way to do it. Well, I put on a pair of shoes that I could get wet, that I could walk, because it was quite painful in some places to walk across here, especially getting to the other side with briars and brambles and thorns. But even walking in the river was quite painful. So I stepped back, I looked at it critically, I planned out a route strategically. I looked at this river as what it was, an obstacle. And how do I ford this river better? I stepped back, I took a step back, and I thought critically with the brain that God blessed me with, and thought, how can I do this better? And it went far, far smoother, far faster, far less painful, and the mission got accomplished better. So I started applying that to other things, and 2 podcast ideas came to mind by God's grace, and this is one of them. Thinking about purchasing ammo a different way. What I deduce is the way a lot of people buy ammo. A big way is just whatever is cheaper. They will buy the cheapest ammo they can find. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that, for stockpiling ammo, or perhaps you have a gun that you just have to buy the cheapest ammo you can find. That's often not the best way. And it astounds me that people will spend really good money on a really nice gun and put the crappiest ammo they can find in it. It baffles my mind. A good example of this is, you'll know that I'm an advocate for training with the 22. And I really like training with the 22, whether it's pistol, whether it's rifle. It's a good analog and a cheaper way to practice. But if you buy 22 ammo, it's so cheap, let's say Remington Golden Bullet, that it does not function in your semi-autos. And I'm not talking about a few malfunction. I'm talking about so many malfunctions that you really can't get through drills that you're trying to work on. And you're dumping out several rounds every time you clear a malfunction. Did you really gain more than you lost, or lost more than you gained by buying the dirt cheapest ammo you could find on that? Stepping up to the Federal Champion ammo, which is still affordable, and in my experience has far better track record of reliability and accuracy. It's just one aspect. A lot of people will just go on YouTube and be like, oh, this video is super cool. Look at this new hyper mega ultra new ammo. Look how cool it looks on the slow speed cameras shooting watermelons or whatever. And not that I don't like watching ballistics videos on the internet when I have the internet, which I don't right now. But I do like those, but I don't base my decisions on those. Realize marketing for what it is. It's trying to get you to buy their product. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not putting that down. I'm saying you, as a gunfighter, as a hunter, as a competitor, as a man that takes self-defense seriously and the protection of himself and society, a member of a well-regulated militia, and by regulated I mean you regulating yourself and training, ought to take it more seriously than that. So let's talk about perhaps a better way to look at ammo selection. Look at the end from the beginning. What is the goal of this ammo? Let's take a real common one. your CCW, your concealed carry weapon ammunition. Now, if you've listened for any length of time, you know I have a general rule for anything I'm going to trust my life to. If it's a new gun that comes out that everybody's clamoring for, I generally try and stay away from that. My general loose rule is about 3 years. Because a lot of new guns, no matter whether they're Glocks or Smith & Wesson, really good brands, a lot of new guns will have issues. That's just the nature of the beast. I don't want to be the one to find that issue out if that's a gun that I trust my life to. If it's just a range toy or a Safe Queen, which I don't generally own, but if that's what you're getting it for, that's fine. But if it's a gun that you're going to trust your life to, don't trust your life to something unproven. Let it be out for a couple of years and well tested and well vetted. Not by some person on YouTube that got the gun for free and is getting kickback and bribes to give a good review of the gun. Real people who really run the gun to see whether it has issues or not. I would say the same rule is good for ammo. Don't get your defensive ammo if it's brand new and just hitting the market. That's a bad choice. Why would you do that? Get one that's been around that has a proven track record. If your goal is self-defense, get a round that you know is good and proven for defense. Another big mistake I see in this world is, I've heard this from people that I generally respect, but I think it's bad advice. They say, get the round that your local PD or your local law enforcement carries. And I would say that's only good advice if, number one, that agency chose the best ammo, which I was in law enforcement a long time. A lot of times that just goes to the cheapest bidder, not the best ammo. You should value your life more than that. Number two, that should, even if that first criteria is met, only be considered if your gun is the same gun, especially the same barrel length as what your local PD carries. I generally EDC a full-size fighting handgun. There are exceptions, but that's my default, is a full-size fighting handgun. Many of you listening do not carry a full-size fighting handgun day to day. If you're CCWing, you're carrying something smaller, a SIG 365 or a Glock 43 or something akin to that. Barrel length, let me back up. Hollow point expansion is greatly dependent on velocity. Is it velocity based? Don't know, like Ballistics 101, shorter barrels give you less velocity. The round that your PD fires through a full-size fighting handgun is designed to expand at those velocities. It may or may not expand out of your subcompact or compact size gun. It may go below that expansion threshold. So it is, in my opinion, poor advice to pick a defensive load based on what your local PD carries, unless your local PD did their due diligence. They carry a Glock 17 and you carry a Glock 17, in which case I say it's probably a fine choice. You can reap some of the benefits if you're worried about the court cases and things like that. But I'd say that's a really overplayed, because if you pick a good defensive load, there's a good chance that some law enforcement agency is going to use it or have used it in the past. Just going with what your local PD carries because they carry it, I would suggest not doing that. Again, step back, think critically, and think of a better way to do it. Look at your gun, first of all. And I'm not even talking about your make and model of gun. Your gun. This is where those videos can come in handy, or reviews or testing can come in handy. Again, we talked about in the beginning, duty ammo is not cheap. Carry ammo is not cheap. Find somebody shooting a similar sized handgun, a similar barrel length handgun, and hopefully not one. As the Bible says, as the Torah says, by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses a matter is established. Look at several different reviews of several different barrel lengths, even if you can, one with a slightly shorter barrel, to make sure that ammo still expands. And then perhaps get that ammo. And this is the most important criteria we've talked about in the past here. Make sure that with your sight setup, whether it's iron sights or an optical sight, make sure that round shoots point of aim, point of impact. This is less critical with a red dot because you're probably going to be able to adjust it. But still critical. Some ammo, especially that hyper, super, mega, ultra ammo, a lot of times is way outside the spec of normal ammo and will not shoot anywhere close to regular ammo, which is going to bring me to the next point. You could do this one of 2 ways. The way we've been talking about thus far, picking your duty ammo first, your carry ammo, your defensive ammo first, and then finding a practice ammo that shoots the same point of aim, point of impact. I will give you an example. Spear gold dots have one of those reputations. And whatever spear gold dot you pick, I imagine it has a good reputation and is used by some kind of agency and has some kind of, for lack of a better term, street cred. And it has stopped adversaries. So if you get that load, there's a good chance Spear has done their due diligence and made a comparable load for practice. I will give you an example. One of my go-to loads is Spear Lawman 147. That is meant to match ballistically their Spear Gold Dot 147s. That is a good example. They've already done that research for me. You may or may not want to go that route. You may decide that you really want to shoot 147 plus Ps, a very common NATO loading. So you might find the Spear Gold Dot, or let's forget about Spear. You may decide you want the, I don't even know if this load exists, it probably does, but a Winchester 124 grain plus P as your go-to defensive round for whatever reason. Good. And then you find out that the Winchester NATO load is a 124 grain plus P. NATO generally is a plus P round. You may find that that shoots the same point of aim, point of impact in your gun. So you can practice with a load that is more affordable. Still shoots the same point of aim, point of impact, same recoil, everything. You mate those together. You may go the opposite route and decide, you know what, I shoot a lot of competition, but I don't reload. I'm almost always going to shoot 115s because they're the most affordable. So I am going to buy, this is my load. I buy bulk Winchester white box 115 grain. Fine. And that's what I compete with, and that's what I go shoot IDPA matches with. That's what I'm most comfortable with. I'd say, great, fantastic choice. And you say, I want to find a load that shoots the same as that load. So I'm going to choose my practice ammo first, and I'm going to choose my defensive ammo second. I'd say, great. That's a great idea. So you look for a 115 grain load, probably not plus P, just a regular 115 grain load that performs well, that shoots the same as your practice load. And I would say either one of those approaches is far better than the first ideas we talked about, where, this new ultra mega ammo looks cool on YouTube, or, my local PD carries it. Look at ammo selection a different way. Some other criteria you might want to consider: recoil impulse. I talked about the 147s. I'm a fan of 147s in the 9mm, and for me, I tend to believe that I can track the recoil better in the 147s. Now, I don't think it recoils any less I don't think the gun returns from recoil faster with a 147. Let me be clear what I mean. I think that the 147s have what I would describe as a slow roll, like a wave. And I tend to be able to track the sights better so that I can follow that sight, whether it's a front sight or a red dot, up and down in the recoil. And as soon as it returns, I can get another shot. So my cadence of fire and accuracy, my timed accuracy, to me seems better. The 115 grains, to me, tend to be snappier, meaning they snap up and snap back. And they may even snap back faster, but then I have to reacquire that front sight, which for me takes time. And this is just a me preference thing. A lot of good shooters like 115s, a lot of good shooters like 124s, and a lot of good shooters like 147s. But what I'm saying is you should consider that and know that for yourself, which one you like better. If you're not able to track the sights yet, if you still blink every time you pull the trigger, it's kind of a moot point. Fix that first. But once you know that, that's something worthy of consideration. And even if on paper the 127 plus P plus Winchester Ranger T is a great round, that I'm sure it probably is, can you track that and keep your eyes open while shooting it? And is the recoil management worth the extra ballistic capability? Or are you better off with a round where you can shoot a fast cadence and practice with a similar ammo, even if on paper it's not as good? It's maybe better for you to shoot a standard velocity 115 grain, for example. Thus far, we've just talked about concealed carry handgun loads, but it can apply to anything. It can apply to your hunting load, a far different world, but just as important. You're talking about survival hunting, putting meat on the table when you have to. So look at it a similar way. What do you want the bullet to do? What do you want this ammunition, what task is it supposed to perform? What are its parameters? A lot of people may choose this again by what's dirt cheap. You don't go hunting unless you're talking about like prairie dogs, just mass slaughtering of prairie dogs. You generally don't go hunting with like a full metal jacket. You don't buy a full metal jacket for your 308 and go hunting with it because it's cheaper. You don't buy it because it's cheaper. Also, a lot of times what sucks people in is the accuracy, and I'm not saying accuracy is not important. I love accuracy in a rifle, especially a hunting rifle. But if you get a load that shoots, half MOA, true half MOA, but it sucks ballistically, let's say you're deer hunting and it's a varmint round, I don't care if it shoots half MOA. I don't want that round. I would rather have a round that shoots 1 MOA, literally half as accurate, but performs great ballistically. Because I know the kind of spot and stalk hunting that I like to do, 1 MOA is going to be plenty good out to a couple of 100 yards. And if it performs well ballistically, I'll take it. Now, I'd rather have the best of both, but if I had to choose. But a lot of people will choose the just literally buy a bunch of ammo and choose the one that's most accurate. And they'd be better off with a slightly less accurate, let's say, Nosler partition that's going to punch through bones and punch through shoulders and do great terminal ballistics, even if it's not as accurate. So what do you want this to do? Let's say I'm going elk hunting and maybe shooting a broadside shot, which is great. I may be shooting a quartering away shot. I may be shooting a straight on coming towards me shot. I want a round that's going to give me sufficient penetration, even if I make a shoulder shot. And let's say I'm shooting a classic caliber, I'm shooting a 270. So you're going to look for a round in the 270, probably on the heavier weight range of the 270, heavy for caliber, with a bullet construction that's probably bonded or kind of construction that's controlled expansion that's going to give you those characteristics. And then you may have 2 or 3 good choices. Let's say a Swift A-frame, a Nosler partition, trophy bonded bear claw, some of those. And then, if they all meet your parameters, then maybe choose the most accurate one out of that. Just going to the store and buying a soft point ammo that's like, oh, ammo super accurate on my gun, and it's meant for small whitetails, probably don't want that as your choice for elk hunting. And that's just one example. On the complete opposite end, you may be prairie dog hunting. You may want that varmint bullet. Again, what's your design parameters? For prairie dog hunting, I do want a lot of accuracy because I might be shooting a prairie dog head, which is an inch at 200 yards. So yeah, I need half MOA for that. And there are a ton of good varmint bullets out there, so I probably do want the most accurate one because if I'm shooting a 223, it's far more power than I need to kill a prairie dog at 200 yards. I'm shooting that powerful a cartridge for the flat trajectory and the accuracy and the affordability. So there's more than enough power there to put down a prairie dog. I get a good, affordable, and accurate varmint bullet. But again, what are your goals? Again, a full metal jacket out of a 223 is plenty to kill prairie dogs. I said no FMJs for hunting. That is an exception. Again, what are your goals? If my goal, and I used to do this, if I'm issued a damage stamp from a rancher to go out and annihilate as many prairie dogs as I can because they're hurting the environment and they carry the bubonic plague, then yeah, I might just go the cheapest, sufficiently accurate round I can get, a giant bulk pack of American Eagle 55 grain full metal jackets, because my goal is literally to kill as many prairie dogs as I can in a day. Same would be said if I'm reloading. If I'm reloading, I'm going to buy the cheap bullets that are sufficiently accurate. And if I'm talking prairie dogs with a 223, I don't want to go max pressure. 1, because I can get more reloads out of my brass. 2, because as we talked about, there's at the ranges I can see a prairie dog, there's more than enough power to kill the biggest prairie dog with the crappiest bullet with a 223. So the power is not really an issue. So I might as well download a little bit. It'll be easier on the gun, easier on the brass, and I have a wide range. I'll go start at the lower end of the reloading range instead of the top, which a lot of people do. I'll find the best accuracy potential in that range, whatever the this half a grain, that half a grain. I'm not going to give reloading data on this podcast, but I'll get that load. I won't start with the craziest newfangled varmint bullet and the super high smart powders, which are great for some things. But again, look at it critically. What am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to eradicate prairie dogs. I love varmint grenade bullets. I think they are fantastic and worth the money if your goal is to do the most amount of damage on varmints and you don't have that many of them. But varmint grenade bullets are not cheap. They are more effective, I will grant you that. They are devastating. So if I'm going to step up to hunt something like marmots or rock chucks or woodchucks, depending on what part of the country you're in, with a 223 at long distance, yeah, it probably makes sense to step up to a varmint grenade. But again, if I'm trying to shoot hundreds of prairie dogs in a day, really the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So step back and look at it critically. What are you trying to accomplish? You were blessed with a brain that God gave you. Think critically. Don't just go by marketing. Don't go with whatever box looks coolest. Don't go with whatever is the cool new thing on YouTube. In fact, if it's brand new, especially if it's for a defensive round, stay away from it. If it's a target round or for fun round or a hunting round, then go for it. But if you're going to trust your life to it, I would even advise staying away from the hot new ammo that just is hitting all the cool YouTube videos. Let it be proven by somebody else. If it's really that great, then it'll be around in a couple of years and you'll be able to use it then. Until then, take something that's already proven and trusted. I'll close with a really germane real-world example. I was a trainer at a very large secured government facility. I was training them how to be gunfighters. There was a very large mass shooting in a very large city in the U.S., and that's as specific as I'm going to get about that. Anyway, I was recruited. I went into interview 4, and they made me the commander to form, head up, hire, make the uniform, everything for a tactical team to stop active shooters in this city. Part of that was choosing what guns we would carry, what ammo we would carry, all those things. And I was blessed. And even though I was ready to move out of that city, I stayed around for quite a few years longer because that was a beautiful blessing from God, a wonderful God-given opportunity to be able to influence that and save lives and be a part of that. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic. Part of that was selecting ammo. Specifically, I'll talk about our duty guns. Now, I'm not a big fan of making everybody carry a Glock 19, or even though I love 1911s, making everybody carry an STI double-stack 1911 and 9mm, though that's what I carried on the team. Because not everybody's me and not everybody shoots the way that I do. Not everybody has the same size hands as I do. I wanted everybody on that team to be able to carry whatever gun they wanted to, whatever gun they shot the best. Some of those people had years training with a Glock 19. Am I going to make them shoot a Smith & Wesson M&P? No, it doesn't make sense. I want them to be the best shooters they can be with the gun, the best gun for them, period. Now, I had some criteria. It had to be a major manufacturer. They weren't allowed to do any internal modifications, meaning any modifications to the internal firing mechanism and things like that, which a lot of them did not like, but there were reasons for that. But anyway, going back to the ammo, I keep getting sidetracked. Going back to the ammo, I needed an ammunition that would perform in a wide range of guns and a wide range of velocities. And unlike everybody says, the average defensive encounter is super close. Well, we were responding to active shooters in fairly large environments, and a long shot with a handgun for us was not outside the realm of possibility. So I needed one that would perform well in a wide range of situations, whether close range or long range or barriers, shooting through barriers, stopping vehicles, stopping people in vehicles, because vehicle rammings were a thing and still are a thing. All those situations. So what I did was I said they could carry any popular defensive caliber, but we would only buy and supply the ammunition for 9mm. And as far as I know, all but one guy pretty much carried a 9mm out of the, I believe, 38 it was when I left. So we bought the ammo and supplied the ammo for 9mm. And the ammunition I decided on for our defensive ammo was the Speer Gold Dot 147. It performed well out of a lot of different barrel lengths. Like I said, some guys would carry a Glock 19. Some people like me would carry an STI 2011. Some people would carry a Walther, PPQ. And that ammunition performed well out of all those guns and different barrel lengths. Also, I like 147s because they do have a lot of mass. They are heavy for caliber, and they tend to do well through barriers. So when it came time to get ammo to practice with and qualify with, I chose the obvious choice for that, the Speer Lawman 147. It's literally designed by Speer to duplicate that round. It has the same feed profile. It has the same geometry. So if it feeds one, it should feed the other. It should shoot same point of aim, point of impact. It's loaded to the same specifications. And I took a lot of time and a lot of research in deciding on that. I'm not saying that's the load you should use. I get no kickback. I get no bribes from any of these companies. I'm saying that's the way that I looked at it, and I took it very seriously because people's lives, my life, my men's lives, the 6-year-old girl walking down the sidewalk licking an ice cream cone, their lives depended on decisions like that, or could potentially depend on decisions like that. I wanted the best thing for the job. And I hope that after listening to this, if you haven't thus far, really give some consideration and look at ammo selection a different way if you haven't already looked at it this way. Not what does somebody recommend on YouTube, not the cool new ammo that explodes watermelons, not what has the most foot-pounds on a piece of paper. Really think critically and decide what's best for your situation and your parameters. With that, men, I want to say thanks for listening to this episode. If you like this content, please consider going to goodshepherdtraining.com, becoming a patron for the fraction, literally a small fraction of what a box of duty ammo costs. I think this information was worth the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo or the price of a fancy cup of coffee in the city. Please consider becoming a patron. Patrons do get to ask me questions, and they quite often do, and I'm happy to answer them when I'm on grid about, I have this specific situation with this gun, and what should I do? What do you think about this or that? And I will give them my opinion on that for what they obviously think it's worth something. If you want to be part of that, so if you want to be part of our Patreon group chat, a group that I am humbled and blessed to be a part of, because a lot of those men have a lot of knowledge in areas more than I do. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. If you want to be part of that group, you can do that, again, by becoming a patron. So consider going to goodshepherdtraining.com. With that, men, I will give you the tactical tip of the day. We talked a lot about rounds and duty rounds. This one's going to be about a phenomenon called a round setback. And this really became a thing that I was aware of back when I was a police officer. Pretty much most police officers besides me carried a 40. And I carried a 40 for a while. But 40 is notoriously a high-pressure cartridge. And as a police officer, a lot of cops have to load and unload their guns a lot administratively. Let's say, for instance, you're checking your gun in when you're booking somebody into a jail. Generally, that's a secure facility. You don't take your gun in there, so you have to take your gun off, unload it, put it in a lockbox, and you might do that several times. And if you do that with the same round, you'll get what's called a round setback. And if you get round setback, it's really bad. If you get it in a really high-pressure round, like a 40, which is already pretty much loaded to max pressure, it's really bad. And there are documented cases, more than one, of, again, by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is established, of guns blowing up. Because when you decrease the volume in that case and compress it, you get more pressure. So round setback is a thing. One of the things that I like to do, part of my EDC is a mini Sharpie. I guess that's its own tactical tip. Carry a mini Sharpie in your pocket. It comes in handy a lot. But a mini Sharpie, and then if that round has been loaded into my chamber and I take it out, I will put a mark on it back where the primer is. and I will inspect it and make sure there's no round setback. And after I've loaded it, let's say 2 or 3 times, I will either just throw it away, it's not worth it, or I will put it aside and use that as one of my practice rounds. Again, it's my duty load, so it should be good for determining where it shoots and make sure it shoots the same point of aim, point of impact. But I will mark that with a Sharpie, and after I've loaded it, whatever you determine for you, 2 times, 3 times, either cycle it out for another use or just throw it away. It's not worth blowing your gun up, especially if that's a round you're depending on. Everybody touts, oh, I want a gun that holds 15 rounds or 17 rounds or 21 rounds. But it's likely, hopefully, the first round or the second round or the third round that's going to solve your problem. If you get down to the 14th or 15th round, you got real problems. So the first round in your gun is super important. That should be the one that's premium. If anything, take that round that's been loaded into your chamber once or twice and cycle it as the last round on your loadout, say for your CCW setup. At least then if your gun blows up, it's the last round you have anyway. Anyway, round setback, it's a thing. That's my tactical tip for combating it. I hope that you enjoy these tactical tips. But for what's more important, the tactical verse of the day. You've probably heard me quote this one before. It's one of my favorites, but I'll go a little bit farther. You're going to find this in 2 Samuel. God is my strength and power. He makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer and sets me on high places. He teaches my hands to make war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have also given me the shield of your salvation. Your gentleness has made me great. You enlarge my path under me, so my feet did not slip. I have pursued my enemies and destroyed them. Neither did I turn back again till they were destroyed. Remember, man, there's no contradiction between being a mighty man of war and being a mighty man of God. For we are made in the image of God. As it says in Exodus 15, the Lord is a man of war. Look at David. Look at how many people he slayed. He was a man after God's own heart. There is no contradiction there. Be strong and courageous. Be a mighty man. And if you're called to it, a man of war. Thanks for listening, men, and have a blessed day.